probably by the end of 2024, I'd much rather have one than the other. I'd much rather have the Splice tool than all of the tools that Ableton affords me. I have limitless creativity and I have minimal time drag. Like I do not have to struggle through, I can just ask it to do the thing and it does it like that.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by IndiePRO.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 302. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, happy whatever holiday you do or don't celebrate in this winter season. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is Circa. Cirque, what's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, friend. Just been working overtime in the private IndiePRO Facebook group, making sure everyone's got the help they need.
There's a lot of action happening in IndiePRO right now.
Yeah.
It's been a wild few weeks. We launched a new tier of our IndiePRO membership, which was really exciting.
Yeah. So we had noticed that a lot of our friends and technically competitors in the music marketing space had started offering website building, email marketing, text marketing software. And so we figured we started to take a look at the different platforms that they were using. Some built on, white label services like SimVolley. Some built them on services like High Level. And we started looking at the pricing. We were like, we could just buy this. Because like unlimited, ability to add accounts to our account. So we just bought it for the year and decided to give it away for free with IndiePRO Annual. And to do that, we made a brand new tier of IndiePRO. So now IndiePRO Monthly is IndiePRO, IndiePRO Annual is IndiePRO Plus, because it's all of our trainings, all of our discounts, all of our workshops, our whole community, all that stuff, plus the ability to build unlimited websites, build unlimited funnels, charge for unlimited products, build memberships, email market, and text market at like ridiculously low costs. So we did that. So now anyone who joins IndiePRO Annual has like pretty much their whole tech stack sorted out for them.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We've been developing a lot of stuff and features and additions to it, cool bolt-ons. It's been a passion project of ours for quite a while now. So excited to be here. And everybody in the IndiePRO community has been having a lot of fun getting their hands dirty, and we've been happy to be in it with them.
Yeah, we're still kind of like, so, you got to imagine like indies have their sites hosted at Bandzoogle, Wix, WordPress, Squarespace. Their domains are all over the place. And so just getting everyone integrated has been the challenge right now. But we're making like super great strides there and just, kind of putting in full days in the group just to make sure everyone has the help they need. And the cool thing about it is that our agency, specifically our team members who have music careers, which is like all of them, are now have access to it to use it for themselves. Eventually we'll be bringing on probably some IndieX clients who want to upgrade to use the CRM and have us manage it for them. And then our founder students will also probably like a fair amount of them have added it as well. So we've got like just a huge community of absolute, geniuses working on it. So there's like no limit to what we can build together. And it solves this problem of like everyone in our community has been on all these different email marketing platforms, all these different website builders. It's hard to give advice for like 20 different website builders, right? So now we're all kind of like on the same page. And so I think it's going to speed up, how much we can advance, how much we can do together by a factor of like 10x, because we're not like having to do all these different disparate tech stacks. Like it's just one.
Yeah, for sure. That's probably the reason that I'm most excited about this and what we've been working towards. So that's just a little teaser of what's going on inside IndiePRO. If you're not an IndiePRO member, you should join us. We'll leave a link in the show notes to IndiePRO. But let's talk about, it's the end of 2023. Here we are. We do this every year where we talk about our predictions for music marketing and the music business in general in the new year. And I'm excited about this episode today because I think we've got some interesting predictions, some things to talk about, maybe some hot takes. I always love this episode. It's fun to look ahead a little bit. And we recently did an episode where we were looking ahead like 10 years, but this is a little bit smaller scale, shorter time horizon. Let's just look forward into the next 12 months and see what's going on.
Yeah, I'm psyched for this app. I think we got a lot of solid things to look at.
I want to kick us off with a conversation that you and I have had. We've started to tiptoe into on the podcast before. We've also had conversations about it in private. And I think this is an interesting one, maybe to get started with. And that is distribution companies. What's happening with distributors, how the service of distribution is becoming more and more commoditized as time goes on. And how I think my prediction is that's going to only continue into the new year, into 2024. And I want to talk about what we think savvy, smart distribution companies are going to be doing to separate themselves and really have an offer that is different from everything else that's out there in the marketplace besides being just the new distro kid or something like that.
Yeah, some lessons from my like economics education come like screaming back when we say words like commoditization. I learned that basically like when something becomes a commodity, which means that there's not much differentiation between competitors, right? Like let's take bottled water for an example. There's nothing really that different about one bottle of water to the next.
Right.
Except you're talking about Dasani, which is trash. But there's like, so once that happens, once you have a lock-in of competitors where like they really can't do much to their service or product to differentiate, you get commoditization, where the only way they can differentiate is by price. And so commoditized things are a race to the bottom. And the same thing has happened with music in general. Like it became a commodity, right? Because there's like just so many good artists and like the barriers to entry have never been lower that it's become commoditized. And so yeah, commoditization is like a system-wide set profile of effects that happens once you get these certain types of parameters around a product class. And so the thing about distributors is, and I will say one thing is that like once you have commoditization, the only way to differentiate and thus get a higher premium or make more margin or charge more is brand. So look at Liquid Death. Liquid Death is a great example. They took bottled water, something we're very familiar with, totally commoditized to death. And they just said, let's make it quirky. Let's add a community. Let's add a brand. Let's make it humorous. Let's give you something to actually care about your bottled water. And they put it in a can and made it look like like a Steel Reserve can, right? So it looks like you're drinking alcohol, but it's just water. So that's kind of how they differentiated, and they're able to charge more because of the brand, not because their water's different. So anyways, that's to say that the problem we have with distributors right now is that they can make very little impact on the underlying protocols. Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer. They have really no say in what you can do with those platforms. So they can't say like Spotify, let's implement this new feature really. And it's like not available to all the other distributors. Like that's not going to happen really.
Right. They're merely a bridge.
Yeah. Now for a period of time in the past 2 years where Spotify was testing out discovery mode before it became publicly available. And some distributors use this to gain a competitive edge by saying, hey, we have access to this thing. Because distributors during that beta mode, they could request to Spotify that tracks be added to discovery mode. And so some distributors were like, cut a deal with us. We'll turn on this thing for you. And like tons of people forked over like 40% commissions on their revenues because they claimed that they had like unique access to discovery mode or they had some secret sauce, and they didn't really. It was just discovery mode. They were just turning it on selectively.
Early sauce. Yeah.
Yeah. So once discovery mode, their competitive advantage went to zero once discovery mode became public for kind of everybody. But yeah, let's just say that like these distributors, they don't have a say in what the platform does. And to run a distributor, like all distributors are filters. Spotify doesn't want anybody to be able to upload a track because that could result in tons of malfeasance, copyright infringement, random noise generators being uploaded. It places a big burden on their quality control. So they let distributors do that and take a premium, whatever they can negotiate with their customers. But at the end of the day, distributors are just databases. They're just fucking databases. They don't do anything that cool or unique. They all run a database, and they're better or worse filters. The real way they can differentiate is on additional services. TuneCore made a boatload, acting like they had label services for the longest time. They would charge you $79 to upload a song and then an additional $20 to like pitch it to playlists or whatever. But they weren't really doing any of that. Like they were just charging an exorbitant fee. So that brings us to today. All distributors are glorified databases one way or another. The way they differentiate is by adding services. And so I think that you're going to see a race to the bottom in price. And our friend Dame, who now works at, what's the name of the distributor he works at?
Too Lost.
Too Lost, right. They're smart because they made this stuff cheaper than it's ever been before. And then they worked on actively converting people over to them as a distributor, which is brilliant because they front ran the commoditization. They were like, let's drop prices to as low as we can get them and let's make it up in volume. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're going to see people squeezed out of distribution because the real game they're in now is charging like $3 a year, $10 a year. Like they really have to, they can't make such a margin because like running a database is like zero costs. Like it's costs to set up, costs almost nothing to run it how they run it. So they're being honest about it and just passing along those savings of that pricing structure to the customer. And I think that's really smart and probably something we'll see continue. We'll see people get squeezed out, forced out, shut down because they can't compete.
I'm happy you brought up Too Lost and Dame because we can shout him out a little bit here as a friend and someone that we work with at the agency. But also what they're doing over there as far as innovation goes, I think is going to be really interesting. And maybe there'll be a use case. I hope that there'll be a use case of what distribution companies can be doing to add value into their offer. I know Dame is working really hard on the community side of Too Lost and really working to try and build up a community of artists where it feels like it's a collective. And actually, we should have him back on the show to talk about that in the new year.
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
That would be a ton of fun. Dame's a great guy and Too Lost is a really cool company. So I'm super excited to see what they do as hopefully a shining example of separating yourself and setting yourself apart from everyone else who is racing to the bottom. They kind of like you said, they front loaded the race to the bottom and now it's like, okay, add value.
That's the thing I forgot to say is that like they did both. They did both competitive moves they had. Brilliant.
Yeah. Super, super cool. So yeah, I think this will be really interesting to watch happen. I think we might even see some known players just lose it all, which would be pretty wild to watch this year. I'm very curious to see if we see the demise of some big players who just are, they're so big that they will fail.
Yeah. I think so. I think we're going to see some big incumbents kind of shudder. And we've already started, like, I probably don't want to talk about it publicly. We've already started to see kind of the beginning stages of something like that.
Yeah, for sure. More to come on that, I'm sure, in the new year as we watch things unfold with a variety of different companies. And this could exist outside of distribution as well. That's only one sector of music that we're talking about here. But I think distribution is one where we're ripe for a harvest in a number of ways. So on another prediction front, we talked about this last year. I talked about AI tools, and everybody's talking about AI tools ever since ChatGPT came about and burst onto the scene in a glorious firework display towards the end of 2022. AI has been all of the rage, and we've talked about AI on the show, and we've talked about tools for AI on the show. I want to talk about a specific use case for AI that I'm hoping that we see in 2024. And I think we will, just based on what I'm starting to see on the platform Splice right now. Splice is a sample buying platform marketplace where you can buy samples. If you're a producer, you can buy loops. It's great. I use it all the time. And a lot of other producers and engineers and artists do as well to make music. Now, what I'm really interested in seeing happen with AI and Splice, and I have a hunch that they're starting to work on, is something like a model where I could go to Splice and type in, like, I'm looking for a J Dilla snare and soft pads in a loop in the key of D minor, and I want a Travis Barker kick, and I need ear candy that sounds like pencils being tapped on a table. And it will then present me with not only samples and loops that I'm looking for, but also stacks of samples, which is often where, as a producer, if you're stacking samples to get a certain sound from your snare, for example. Or,
That's what you do. That's your job.
right, exactly. If we're starting to move in that direction where you're getting stacks of samples or packs of different elements, you're getting, okay, there's your input, right? You wanted a Dilla snare, a Travis Barker kick, pad, etc. Here's pack number 1 that I think solves what you're looking for. Oh, you don't like that? Here's pack number 2. Mix and match, swap them in.
But also like, oh, pack number 2 I like. Can you change it to this key? Can you constrain it to this scale? Can you speed it up to this BPM? Can you drop that to half speed in terms of the drum beat, keep everything else the same?
Yeah.
There's so much you can do that you would have had to do in a DAW. Okay, like what does a DAW do? Essentially, a lot of the DAWs are fine-tuned right now to help you manipulate samples, right? Like to help you manipulate audio clips and sources. So much of that will be like completely unnecessary not too long in the future, right?
Yeah, and Splice is already starting to do this with Splice Bridge, which acts like a plug-in to your DAW, connects between the two. Then when you're auditioning loops, for example, or samples, it will match it to the BPM of your project. So this is that's why I brought this to the conversation today, because we're already starting to see the seedlings of this happening. And as an engineer, I'm so excited about it. I'm living for this kind of stuff. I'm so excited. I think it will make creativity happen so much faster and get you into a state of creation without restriction and constraint so much quicker, which is so valuable when you're trying to make something.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of downstream effects of that. One is like, first of all, I wholesale agree that like 2024 will be the year that AI comes from music tooling. Okay. It's already like well established in prod that like text prompts converted to music files are like, they work, right? And it's only going to get better. Consumers will get access to this. Producers will get access to this over 2024. We're going to see release after release after release that starts to invalidate the use case of many of the features in Ableton, many of the features in Logic Pro X. And really, so one, I think that impacts how DAWs are created. And I'd much rather, probably by the end of 2024, I'd much rather have one than the other. I'd much rather have the Splice tool than all of the tools that Ableton affords me. I have limitless creativity and I have minimal time drag. Like I do not have to struggle through, I can just ask it to do the thing and it does it like that.
Right.
I think that drastically changes the DAW landscape, and probably you'll see DAWs compete by just doing it themselves, by having their own, AI creation tools right there inside the DAW and stripping out of a lot of the tooling. The downstream effects are, if you thought that this shit was like democratized and demonetized now,
Whew.
you just wait.
Yeah.
You're going to see that 100x, right? You're going to see, we're going to go from 50 million songs or whatever, 50 million artists on Spotify to hundreds of millions like that. And so you can just roll forward the tape from there and understand what that does to the revenue picture. You can also think about, okay, not only does that make it easier for producers to produce high quality music and even non-producers to start producing, but it also gives the consumer the ability to create musical works that they want to listen to. And I think you're going to see consumer, like non-musician music, consumer created music happening more and more. Programmer created music, okay? Prompter created music. And the need for creative fulfillment coming from other artists is going to drastically reduce in that sense, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's going to get silly, dude.
Yeah, I wonder how quickly that human phenomenon will take root,
Yeah. Well, I think that like what this does is, because like I've thought about this a lot, is that like, well, why does an AI, like, because I thought about what does a producer do in that future? What is their role? What do we need them for? And you need them for taste, right? They know how to describe the things they're looking for. They know the history of music and production in that lane to play nicely with it. They're not amateurs, so they know enough to prompt correctly. Okay. But what if you had an AI that like was tapped into your synapses? It could measure when you like something. And then it could just generate random noise until it converges on the thing that hits your pleasure centers the most, right? Then there would be no need for people with taste.
An AI that's figuring out when the hair on the back of your neck stands up.
Yeah, that's when you won't need producers at all. You won't need any intermediaries because the AI will just figure out what you like and give it to you. But in order to get there, you need Neuralink. You need like all types of feedback mechanisms that are hardwired to your reaction. And I think that's a leap that will actually take some time. So in the meantime, I think the place for artists, especially those who know the history of production, like, what trap drum kits were overused in 2022 and now like would be passe to use. You know which ones were used in like the early 2000s and could be cool to bring back as retro now. Like, these little taste decisions that an AI probably won't just like intuit from a generic prompt. You can give it the specific prompts that get you to something that's like super lit right now. And I think that era survives for a lot longer than the era of like needing a DAW to stretch or pitch bend or, quantize or any of this stuff.
If you think about it, that should be a producer, engineer, creative's dream. Like, oh, I'm needed for my taste. Like, that's everybody's ego just being fed, Oh, the only thing I'm needed for is my taste. I don't actually need to know how to turn the knob enough and listen really well with my ear to know if the compression is just right or if the reverb tail is too long.
I would argue that that's never actually mattered. More often, I see people who know everything about how to freak a DAW but can't make a good song.
I agree with you for sure.
Like, the more gearheaded you are, like, probably the worse your taste is in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And then also, like, there's the punk phenomena, right? Like, technical skill didn't matter in that. What mattered was taste, cultural taste. So yeah, I think it's just like a continuation of something that's always existed. It's just like, holy shit, the speed run levels on this next year is like insane.
Yeah. It's exciting. I actually think it's really exciting.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. We're talking a little bit about how music software might be marketed. To zoom out a little bit to just marketing in general, though, something we're definitely going to see more of in 2024. And I don't think we need to get too into the technical weeds of this on this episode. I really don't want to break out marketer brain jack here, but we're going to see more privacy related constraints on the way you market on the internet. It's going to continue to happen. It's been happening for years. It's going to keep happening. We're already seeing, back in the summertime, we saw the widespread changes to text message marketing with the way that carriers rolled out regulations around app to phone numbers.
And thank God, because tired of
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Is it a pain to deal with? Yeah, but it's not that much of a pain.
For us who just faded the whole text messaging, music marketing wave and just stuck with email, it's a blessing. It's like, thank God people can stop asking me about text marketing.
Yeah, for sure. But we saw that. We saw, in the fall, we started to see the changes with UTM parameters on website URLs and how the tracking related to them is starting to get stripped away. And we're going to start to see early in the new year changes with how Google and Yahoo are looking at senders who are sending into inboxes. That's on the horizon as well. So I say all these things to say that privacy concerns, it's the thing that you're going to always have to deal with as a marketer, as a music marketer, no matter what you're marketing, but as a music marketer, for the purpose of this podcast, there's going to be things that you're going to have to roll with, and you're going to have to do research, and you're going to have to learn or pay somebody to do how to get through the challenges. It's not that hard. It's not that scary. There's nothing doomsday about it. Marketing isn't dead, but it's going to continue to change.
Yeah, Facebook's been going wild with AI tooling.
No, dude, Facebook's been dead since 2018. What are you talking about?
Facebook and Instagram Meta is going nuts with AI tooling. A lot of it hasn't hit our accounts yet. AI chatbots in Messenger, AI avatars that you can speak to, but they're coming. I would be surprised if Meta Ads ML didn't get a second look. Cause like when Meta Ads was built with its machine learning capabilities and it's been updated and iterated on since then, like it was before large language models and the different specific features of large language models like ChatGPT or GPT 3, 4, 5 that are unique to large language models. Like other machine learning, other AI can't do some of the things that LLMs can do. And I would be surprised if we didn't see some of that advancement eke into the Meta Ads platform in one way or another, whether that be in creative types and placements, whether it be in optimization itself, whether it be in targeting. There's a lot of different ways it could manifest, but I'd be shocked if we didn't get to the end of 2024 without seeing some kind of rollout there.
Man, I would be so psyched about that. I really hope.
Yeah,
I really hope that that's the case, because it's been a long time since the back end of Meta Ads has really changed, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It would be nice to see.
Yeah. Changed in a good way. I mean, like not by external forces like Apple or something whack like that. I would love that.
I think also like marketing is coming up against privacy in a serious way where probably the likely result is some kind of innovation to how we do things that we is too difficult to foresee here. Might not happen in the next year, but I think eventually like we need a page one rewrite of how this all works. I just don't know when it comes. But like you see the privacy focused entities like Apple coming in, trying to limit how like open, decentralized, permissionless protocols like email work, which is like a tall order. And then also like placing limitations on browsers. And there's all this fragmentation of how privacy works across devices and platforms. At the same time, you have all the ad tech people trying to react to that. And it just seems like a big mess that doesn't get solved by like eventually settling at some kind of equilibrium. Like they're going to keep fighting until something completely innovative pops out of the mess and it just becomes the new way we do things. Just like Meta Ads did back in like the Google pay-per-click days.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I definitely could see that happening. I don't know if I could see it happening in 2024, but I definitely could see it getting to a point where some smart, creative entrepreneur throws their hands up and says, okay, like if this is where we're going to be, I'm going to do something different. And the something different that they come up with is so vastly ahead of or different from what we've been doing that it carves a whole new landscape for us. That would be amazing.
I think it's coming. Maybe not in 2024, but I'll tell you what is coming in 2024. Something I didn't mention in the pre-shows. I would bet my entire record collection that this time next year, there will be on average about 10 posts a week asking us about music NFTs. And that may be surprising to some of you listening right now because you're like, what? Music NFTs are like, NFTs are dead. Cycles, like, you know, hype cycle is over, all that stuff. But Jack and I were talking this morning about how sort of the liquidity cycle is picking back up, which means crypto will pick back up. And when crypto picks back up, people are going to be buying and selling NFTs. And all the musicians are going to ask how they can get in on this gold rush. It's going to become a thing again, probably next year.
I mean, that leads in perfectly to just talking about the market in general, economics again, and our conversation earlier before we were rolling about catalog buying and your thoughts on that kind of as an extension of what we were talking about a few weeks ago on the show, where catalog buying might head to in 2024, just based on the position of the world right now.
Yeah. So all year, I've been talking about on YouTube, on this podcast, how like the whole song catalogs bubble is going to burst because these are just insane valuations. Like Sony paid 20 mil, I think it was 20 mil or more for Bob Dylan's catalog. I did calculations. It would take them 16 years just to recoup their initial investment, after which they could start profiting. Like any other investment would get you it back much sooner than that, right? Like there's tons of investments that don't take 16 years to capitalize. So it's a bad investment. They're aping the top. They're aping the top of the song catalog bubble. But the liquidity cycle is bottomed. So in late 2021, not to get all nerdy, the Fed started raising interest rates. That sucks liquidity out of risk markets like stocks, bonds, crypto, song catalogs, real estate, right? All these things took their various tumbles over the last 2 years. Liquidity cycle is bottomed. Fed is expected to start lowering interest rates soon, which means the exact same thing in reverse. And the same mania and excess liquidity in the system that caused the song catalog bubble to begin with will return. In fact, Hypnosis Songs Fund might just skirt by, right? Like they're on the verge of being bust. But if they can just make it to like mid 2024, I think they'll survive because people will run out of places to put their excess liquidity, their excess money. It's going to funnel into real estate, funnel into stocks, funnel into bonds, funnel into crypto, funnel into whatever, like used cars like it did last cycle. And sure enough, soon enough, song catalogs.
last in line in the asset classes.
Will. Yeah.
Behind used cars.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hedging my bearish calls for song catalogs as a risk asset by saying, don't tell me that I was wrong in 2024 because I told you at the end of 2023 this was going to happen. There's going to be another bubble around song catalogs, but that doesn't mean that the long-term trend is not to zero. Eventually, people will figure out that these song catalogs can't possibly return their initial in any type of reasonable time frame. So yeah, I'm fully expecting that bubble to heat up again in 2024 and certainly in 2025.
The two of us were talking before we started recording, just to give you guys some insights into that conversation, how I actually think that after this cycle is where we might see the bubble burst altogether, and it's done. Cirque wasn't so sure of that, and I'm maybe I'll be wrong, but we'll see.
There's a great meme where it's like a roller coaster that shoots up, and then it falls down, and then it goes in a loop that's pretty big, and then falls down, and then goes in like a smaller loop and a smaller loop and a smaller loop to zero. I think that's what the song catalog valuation chart ends up looking like.
I guess we'll see. This will be an interesting year for that asset class. I'm definitely interested in watching it like any other asset class. But I'm glad you brought up NFTs as well, because it was about 2 years ago when we were kind of bombarded with questions about NFTs on the reg, and it sounds like we're probably going to have that again shortly here, which is fine. I'm stoked to talk about NFTs. Let's do it,
Actually, there's been a major innovation in NFTs since the bubble went burst, where people started wondering how they can put NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is not like kitted out to contain arbitrary data. You have to like do it in a weird way. And the big criticism of NFTs last cycle was, it's just a link to a picture. You can change the picture. It's not actually on the blockchain. It's just a link. Well, inscribing NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain, what are called inscriptions, are the picture on the blockchain. There is no link. It's the actual data of the JPEG on the blockchain. And you can put any arbitrary data there. People started doing inscriptions, not just on Bitcoin, but on Ethereum, on Solana, on all the other blockchains. So now that argument that like, it's not the actual song, it's a link to the song. It's not the actual picture, it's a link to the picture. It's not the case anymore with inscriptions. And that changes things fundamentally because the problem of using blockchains to create digital property rights is that anyone can change that link. So there's no verifiable like record, right? But with inscriptions, we can. So that might come to change the idea of intellectual property fundamentally over the next year, certainly the next 5 years, because a big public blockchain that's nearly unhackable like Bitcoin, containing a record in its arbitrary data, proves that record was put there at that time by that wallet.
bullish.
Yeah, it changes how it plays out in court. So you might start to see like copyrights executable with blockchain tech, and that could change this sort of like, because I generally fade music NFTs, but it could change the picture there when it starts to represent like actual unchangeable ownership.
We did a series of Web3 discussions, and when we kicked it off, a lot of what we talked about was intellectual property and data on blockchains. I'm going to link back to that in the show notes because it's definitely worth going back to in light of this conversation right now. Because that's wild, and I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing with me, dude. I'm
No
not,
problem.
I'm not on the alpha of what's going on in blockchain and Web3 anymore. So this is fascinating and really interesting. When you say data, the data is inscribed. Is it ones and zeros kind of data of a song? What is it?
Yeah, if you open up a JPEG in like a Word application, like Notepad, all you see is code.
Right.
That code can be put on a blockchain, and thereby like the application that shows you what the token is, like the picture, just reconstructs from that code.
Wow.
It's pretty wild. Yeah. And so it's funny because like you couldn't do the link thing on Bitcoin. It's not built for that. So that forced them to do inscriptions. And then inscriptions became a much more attractive way to do it on every other.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's super cool.
So cool. Having to do the thing that you didn't want to do enabled us to move, steps beyond where we were, possibly.
Limitations, man. They're the mother of creativity.
I love it. Super cool. Well, these are my predictions and our predictions. I'm really interested to see what 2024 looks like, but what I can tell you guys is it's going to be a great year at IndiePRO HQ on the podcast. We're going to have more guests that we're going to be talking to. Circa and I are going to be hopefully bringing you guys more interesting information, stories, case studies from the agency and our programs. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's been an amazing 2023.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you for being with us all year here on Creative Juice, guys.
Yeah. Thank you guys. We wouldn't be here without you. We wouldn't have anyone to talk to about these things, just ourselves. And that would get real boring real quick.
Whoa.
We'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice. Happy New Year, Indies.
Peace.
East Coast, feel us, West Coast, feel me. Say what?